Bobby?
Oh, what have we here?
Oh, we told all our friends at school about how boring our park is compared to other parks that have habitat diversity, and everybody agreed we want a lot of different kinds of wild animals in our park.
Yeah, so we started a habitat club at school, and our first project is to grow all different kinds of plants and grasses, so lots of wild animals would like to come and live there.
So what's this? A model of the park?
Yeah, our habitat club made it to show people what our park's going to look like after we're finished. See, here's the park, and here's our school, and here's our pond, and here's all the trees and bushes we're going to grow.
First, we had to figure out what kinds of urban wildlife we wanted to have in our park, like turtles and rabbits and butterflies.
Then we had to figure out what kind of food, water, and shelter the animals would need. Look here in the front so we can watch from the school window are all the tall grasses where the rabbits can make their runways, burrows, and hide from their enemies. We're also planting clover for the rabbits.
And we're planting flowers for the butterflies. They like to drink the nectar from the zinnias.
And all kinds of birds like to eat the seeds from flowers, too.
Yeah, and for bushes, we are planting blackberries, blueberries, Juneberry bushes, and holly. Over 100 different kind of birds eat the blackberries. And for the other bushes, they'll become food and shelter for the bluebird, mockingbird, and tanagers.
And we're making bird feeders and houses too, see?
Yeah.
And we're also planting some more tall trees like mulberries and cherry trees and junipers because blue jays and woodpeckers like to eat the fruits.
I'm very impressed. And you know, I think your habitat has enough diversity to make a happy home for some predators, too.
Great! Predators? We weren't counting on predators.
Predators eat other animals, right?
Like Barney, your barn owl.
Right. Well, you know, man's a predator, too.
Yeah, like Tony in our class. He hunts wild turkey every Thanksgiving, and he eats the meat.
Right. And the animals the predators eat are called prey.
Prey? Yeah, like the mice that Barney eats.
You know, chances are if you have mice in your habitat, which I'm sure you will, you'll have a barn owl like Barney, too. Great. Speaking of which, it's dinner time for Barney. You want to help me out?
Oh, yeah.
Great. Okay. You want to just leave this stuff here?
Okay.
How come I've never seen a barn owl in Center City before?
Well, that's because they're nocturnal. They only come out at night.
I thought owls lived in the woods.
Well, some owls do, but barn owls live near people. Can you guess why?
I know, because barn owls like to eat mice and rats, and the mice and rats live near people.
That's right. Just because they're called barn owls doesn't mean they just live in barns. They live in a lot of other places, like outside city buildings, underneath bridges, in attics and factories. Remember I told you that Barney used to live in the church steeple downtown.
How many mice does a barn owl eat exactly?
Well, a barn owl is going to hunt constantly every night. It leaves its home around sunset, hunts all night until sunrise. In one night, an owl can catch as many mice as 12 cats can.
Whoa.
That's 10 to 20 mice. And if it has babies, it'll catch even more than that. In a half an hour, it can bring as many as 20 mice to its babies. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Here, little guy.
Just wait right out here. I'm going to go in.
How come owls are such good hunters? They look so slow.
Well, that's because they have such good hearing. They have really long openings in the side of their head, so when they turn their face from side to side, they can hear which direction a sound's coming from. And they can turn their head far better than people can. They can turn it about 270 degrees. That's about like me turning my head from here all the way around this way to the other side. And because they have such good hearing, they're one of the few animals that can hunt in total darkness.
What else makes barn owls such good hunters?
You know the feathers they have around their face? It's called a facial disc, and it works like a satellite dish in that it amplifies the sound that mice and rats make. And thirdly, they have incredible eyesight. They can see as well at night as we can see in the day. Okay, I'm gonna feed these guys now.
Okay.
You see, when an owl hunts at night, it flies slowly over an area where it knows it can find mice, like your habitat or a city dump or an alleyway. And it listens carefully for the sound of mice. And when it hears one, it makes a sharp hissing noise or it snaps its beak, which causes the mouse to stay perfectly still, hoping it won't be found. And then it goes in for the attack immediately, striking the mouse with its feet and digging its claws or talons into the mouse and killing it instantly. Then it takes the mouse in its beak and it flies off to a tree or back to its roost to eat it. And it eats the whole thing, one bite, head first.
But if barn owls only come out at night, then how will we know if they're living in our habitat?
Well, that's easy, because you'll have owl pellets. That's the thing an owl spits up after it's eaten.
Yuck, that sounds gross.
It's not gross, really. In fact, yeah, here's a pellet. See? Look here, Tammy.
Oh. It's soft and dry. And it doesn't smell.
Right. An owl will spit up about one of these a day. It's forced upward through the stomach until it shoots out the owl's mouth. And it carries the remains of about 5 different mice that the owl couldn't digest. It's got all the parts in it, like the bones, teeth, claws, and fur of the mice. Here, if we break it up here, this gray stuff here is the fur.
Whoa.
That's neat. But we're going to need a lot of mice in our habitat to keep a barn owl alive.
It's true, Winston. But the more mice you have, the more barn owls you have, and the more barn babies that'll be born.
Well, from the fruit from our blackberry, blueberry, and juniper trees, I'm sure we'll attract lots of mice for the barn owls.
Yeah.
And one thing that barn owls don't need are the poisons and pesticides that people put out to feed the mice and rats. If an owl eats a mouse that's been poisoned by a pesticide, it'll die. That's why so many barn owls die young, because they eat mice that have been poisoned by pesticides. And another problem for barn owls are cars. You see, a barn owl flies rather slowly, and it hunts for mice a lot of times along the roadside because that's where the mice are. And when the cars are traveling fast, they can easily hit and kill an owl. In fact, that's what happened to Barney. He got hit by a car and both of his wings were broken, and now he can't fly anymore.
Cars and pesticides are a limiting factor for barn owls, right? Just like cars and cats are a limiting factor for our baby Robin, right?
Yeah.
Good for you, Winston. You've been doing your homework. Another limiting factor for barn owls is loss of habitat. Anytime they tear down an old building or a barn and turn it into a parking lot, the barn owl doesn't have anywhere to go for shelter.
We'll make sure there's no limiting factors for barn owls. We'll make sure no one puts pesticides in our park. There'll be lots of mice, so the barn owls can stay right in the park and won't have to go near the road and get hit by cars.
Good plan.
Yes.
What about Pearl, the bald eagle? She's a predator too. Can she come and live in our habitat when she gets better?
Well, I'm afraid Pearl would be very unhappy in your habitat, Tammy. You see, bald eagles are not urban wildlife. They have very special needs in their habitat that they just can't find in the cities. They're very picky about where they live. It's getting harder and harder for them to find wild areas where they can set up a home. That's one reason why there aren't a lot of bald eagles left in the United States.
Is that why they're an endangered species? Because it's so hard for them to find the right home?
Well, that's one reason, yes. There used to be bald eagles in every state in the United States. And now there's only one place that you can find a lot of bald eagles, and that's Alaska.
Alaska? We have to go all that way to Alaska to set her free?
Well, we won't have to go all the way to Alaska, but we will have a tough job finding the right home for Pearl. We'll need to find one of the few places in the United States that has the right habitat for bald eagles. And she'll be ready to release soon, so we need to find it. She's been exercising and getting a lot stronger. In fact, we've had her on an exercise program for over a month now. That's why the cages are so big, so she can fly around and get strong again. And if we didn't exercise her, her joints would get all stiff and she'd get fat and flabby and she wouldn't be able to fly around and catch her food.
How
long do you suppose her wingspan is? From the tip of her left wing to the tip of her right wing.
Longer than me?
A lot longer. It's about 8 feet long. That's 2 feet longer than I am. And she has such a wide wingspan so she can soar high in the sky and fly distances to hunt for her food like fat fish or duck. And sometimes they fly so high you can't even see them from the ground. Their eyesight is so sharp that they can spot their prey a mile away. When they see a fish right underneath the surface of the water, they dive down and thrust their feet forward. And they have talons on the ends of their feet that are about 1.5 inches long, which they grab the fish with. And if the fish is real slippery, then it has little tiny spikes on the end of its toe, which it tighten its grip with. And then it takes the fish over to a tree, and with its very powerful 2-inch beak, tears the food open and eats it. And most of the time, after an eagle gets its prey, it lets out this sharp cry, just kind of to tell everybody what a good fisherman it is.
So how many fish will Pearl need to catch every day?
Well, she needs to eat about 1 pound of food a day. That's about 2 good-sized fish. But before the winter comes, when she knows it's going to be harder to find fish because the water will freeze, she needs to store up energy for the winter. So at that time, she'll eat about 6 good-sized fish a day. When the water freezes, she flies south until she finds unfrozen water. And the reason she needs to store up so much food before winter is because she knows that she's going to have to fly long distances to find food in the winter. And she can travel as much as 200 miles a day. And then in the spring, she goes back to where she had her nest before and she starts a new family.
And then she'll need even more fish to feed her babies. Won't it be hard to find her a habitat with enough fish?
Yeah, it'll be hard to find her habitat with that much food. And also, all the other special needs she has in her habitat, like water, shelter, and space. She needs very clean water. It can't have any pesticides or pollution in it, or she'll get sick from the fish she eats. And for shelter, she needs tall trees to build her nest in. And because of her wingspan and all the distances she has to travel to find food, she needs a lot of open space. And another thing that bald eagles need is to be far away from people so that they can have peace and quiet to raise their babies in.
And she needs to be far away from irresponsible people that might shoot her again, too, right?
That's right.
No wonder it's going to be hard to find the right home for Pearl. She needs so many things that are hard to find, like clean water, open spaces, and no people.
Yeah. We don't want to keep her in this cage any longer than we have to. She's going to be ready to take care of herself in a few weeks, so we need to find a home for Pearl soon.
Thank you.